you could say that Trump was half right in that concluding sentence. The Clintons are indeed the sordid past, but Trump's past is just as sordid, as we'll see in the next segment, and he is not capable of leading the country to any bright and clean future. And that's, like I say, while they have a point in regards to Bill Clinton's lecherous past and his wife's culpability in his abuse of his position, it's not as if Donald Trump, as I say, is an icon of chivalry, so he may not want to pull on that thread, but he will anyway. Why? Because he thinks he can get away with it. He thinks there's nothing that he cannot do, much like Custer in this alternate history novel. Custer, his wife convinced him, and he didn't need much convincing, that he could conquer Cuba, conquer Spain's overseas empire in this alternate 1882. And while, of course, the United States is depicted as winning that war, they only win after Custer is taken captive by the enemy, and Vice President Chester A. Arthur starts making sane, rational decisions. So Trump would be exactly the same thing. However that translates to the early 21st century, that's what makes him so dangerous. It's one of many things that make him so dangerous to the country and to the conservative movement. The Republican Party, who knows, maybe the Republican Party can be revived after it's been completely purged and fumigated of Trumplicanism. In fact, Trump has a long history of maltreatment of women, adultery, and is the last person to cast stones, or should be, the last person to cast stones at anyone else's marriage. While he insists that his aides not tell people he lost, as if that changes the results or the public perception of them, his inner circle desperately grapple over something to stop people from talking about just how abysmal and outclassed he really was. Inside Trump Tower, his inner circle of advisors has been in turmoil. While some have attempted to reach to the hard-headed candidate by suggesting to reporters that he must prepare more thoroughly for the second debate, which he won't, others have spitballed ideas aimed at changing the subject, like they could, including a last-minute trip to Israel that might replicate the more presidential optics and media saturation coverage they achieved with last month's surprise summit with the Mexican president, which turned out to be a complete debacle. Because the Mexican president wasn't overawed with Trump. And first thing out of President Nieto's mouth was, we're not paying for any wall on our border with the United States. And then Trump came out after the press conference and didn't say anything about it. Then, when he was down in Mexico City, then when he returned to, I think he had a rally in Phoenix that night, when he returned, and he was back in front of his cultists and his idolatrous pagan worshipers, he started lying about, they're going to pay for that wall. And President Nieto said I made him say that I made him capitulate. And then President Nieto said, no. He'd already released a tweet. He'd already tweeted, we're not paying for any wall. It's the first thing I told Trump. That's why he was so subdued in Mexico City. He didn't feel like he could get away with a lie down there. But then he comes back home, comes back up here, and starts lying again. This is a kind of, nobody is going to trust the United States if Donald Trump is president. Our allies won't trust him. And that's really what matters. Who cares? I mean, our allies won't trust him. Our enemies won't take him seriously. It'd be just like Barack Obama. Just exactly like Barack Obama, and for many of the same reasons. Trump is a leftist. Trump is a supreme, cosmic, stupendous egotist and narcissist. And he's a liar, a promiscuous one, with his lies as well as the other kind. One of Trump's closest confidants at the moment, Rudy Giuliani, also a serial adulterer, although you can say in Giuliani's case that he never wrote books bragging about his sexual exploit. Giuliani said immediately after the debate that he'd advise Trump to skip the next two, which, you know, it's even now would still probably be a net gain, because he should have eschewed debates at all. He really should have. Monday was the proof. On Wednesday, Giuliani indulged a conspiracy propagated by a Russian state controlled news site. You think that we never Trumpers kid Trumplicans when we describe Breitbart and Fox News as being Trump Pravda? Here's one of Trump's vulnerabilities, problems, is that he's totally sold out to Vladimir Putin on the Russians. Now here's one of his top campaign surrogates spreading a conspiracy theory originated by a Russian-controlled news site. Oh my God, you just can't write this. The conspiracy is that Mrs. Clinton might have gotten the questions in advance. And on Thursday, why would that matter? And on Thursday, campaign manager Kellyanne Conway said she had indeed told her candidate not to call women fat pigs, and the best she could do at trying to change the subject was insisting that the results, or his insults, were beside the point because he, in fact, supports women. Well, and what does that mean? Sometimes he lets them be on top? I mean, oh, man. What a Charlie Foxtrot this is, Trumplicans. And you're going to ride this all the way into the ground like Dr. Strangelove, aren't you? Not Dr. Strange. He's cool. I'm talking about Dr. Strangelove. Google it if you don't get the reference. Like I say, that's not support. Oh, Trump supports women. That's not support. It shows a mean-spirited, unstable frame of mind, and also probably means he lets the women be on top occasionally. There are also I'm serious about that. I'm serious about that. I wonder whether Trump ever lets Melania or whomever be on top. I would think someone with his ego would insist it has to be the missionary position, or, well, never mind. I won't go in. But I mean, you get the idea. Trump has to be dominant. Trump has to be the one. He's got to be the initiator. Again, it's metaphorical, but I would be shocked if it wasn't literal as well. Now, these are also things that will turn off women voters who may have been willing to look over some of the candidates' other shortcomings. I don't know who these women might be, but, well, actually, I do know of at least a few. Michelle Paradiso, Diana Serafin, for starters. Desperate to put any sort of positive gloss on a disappointing debate performance, Trump's campaign claimed to have seen the operative term being claimed to have seen, an $18 million windfall in small donor online donations in the 24 hours after the debate. Kind of like a care package, I guess. However, it's not yet clear if that money is all from online contributions or how much of it will be available to Trump, or if the 18 million figure is accurate. Now, the facts are, boy, my voice changing again? The facts are Trump is not disciplined. He's not serious. He will continuously find a way to shoot himself in the nuts, and then he will insert, well, then he will insert that foot in the mouth of one of the women he supports so much. You know, it's barely more than a month away from the election, and Donald Trump is no closer to showing a willingness to run a professional, real, genuine campaign. But then he's not a career politician, so he says. So his supporters should know that this is exactly what they asked for. Mona Charen, a syndicated columnist, also noted and noticed Trump threatening Mrs. Clinton over the Lewinsky scandal. And Mona Charen was around back then as well, and she knows very well that voters didn't care about it then, which just makes it all the more questionable that they would ever care about it now, even if it was one Clinton removed. But the more to the point, as I mentioned in the previous segment, Donald Trump is trying to claim the moral high ground. Think about this one, evangelical Trump supporters. Because this is a guy you're defending. I mean, is adultery and abusing women and so forth only bad when a Democrat does it? Or is it bad, period? You've completely lost your ability to distinguish between philosophy and party. Now, you try to make party, you try to make the latter as much like and make it hew as close to the former as you possibly can, but the two are not identical. And that's the realization you've totally blown out the airlock. You have to support Donald Trump. You have to blind yourselves, and you have to become like him in order to ignore it. You have to be self-delusional, and you have to be a liar. Now, Donald Trump, always the hero of his own tales, closed out the first presidential debate with a tribute to his own courtesy and high-mindedness, which was in reality his trademark passive-aggressive assholery. Here's what he said. I was going to say something extremely rough to Hillary and to her family. And I said to myself, I can't do it. I just can't do it. It's inappropriate. It's not nice. But she spent hundreds of millions of dollars on negative ads on me, so I'd be totally justified. That's what he said. He made thinly veiled reference to what everybody knows he was talking about, but didn't actually put it into direct verbatim words, patted himself on the back for not doing it, and then justified it in the same paragraph. Typical trademark Trump. There's more alliteration for you. Later on, one of the candidate's sons, Eric Trump, offered that it required not just magnanimity for Trump to avoid mentioning the topic, but a lot of courage. Really, courage. I remember when Dan Rather used to close every newscast with courage. One of the most cowardly men who ever lived, and here we go again. The tradition continues, apparently. But the rhetorical term, by the way, for what Trump is up to here is called paralipsis. It's raising something by claiming to abjure it. I could mention your DUIs, but I'll refrain. And in the meantime, you just mentioned them. You're mentioning them, but then claiming after the fact that you won't do what you just did. Passive aggressive. Once the campaign boiled down to two tabloid candidates, that's the state of our culture in 2016, folks. That's the state of our culture in 2016. People don't care if candidates can actually wisely lead the country. All they care about is if they're entertaining. That's it. Democrats nominated Hillary Clinton apparently because, well, might get Bill back in there and then he'll be entertaining. Plus, they can count on Hillary to be Barack Obama's third term. But you'd think Republicans would be immune to that, and I guess maybe they were up until this cycle, and now the Republican Party is a joke, too. Two tabloid candidates, man. So once the campaign boiled down to two tabloid candidates, this Charlie Foxtrot was inevitable. Now, I'm old enough to remember 2015. Let's see, I think on the calendar that was last year, when many in both parties opposed the specter of another Bush or another Clinton precisely because of weariness with all they represent, weariness with all the drama. If we can't come up with anything better, anything more creative, anything more original than Bush, Clinton 2, then the country is, well, Charlie Fox trotted. But the voters decreed otherwise. So let's iron out a few wrinkles from the wreckage. Trump must presume that the Clinton sex scandals, and it must be those and not the financial and other scandals he's referring to because Chelsea Clinton's presence supposedly stayed his tongue, just like all the Trump sex, financial, and other scandals, which will come to the fore should he actually win. Anyway, that's a very large presumption. He's assuming, Trump must be presuming that the Clinton sex scandals represent a vulnerability for Hillary Clinton. And that is a huge presumption. Most voters probably think of her as the victim of her husband's behavior. They did 18 years ago. Why would they think any differently now? Her favorability rating shot up during the Lewinsky scandal. Maybe not as much as her husband's, but still. Oh, God. Does she deserve sympathy? Representative Marsha Blackburn expressed what she perceived to be the Trump camp's view when she offered, quote, "I find it so interesting that there continues to be this conversation about what he has said when you look at what she has done. Jennifer Flowers, Paula Jones, Monica Lewinsky. My goodness." Blackburn is a little confused. The party line on Trump's wild, cruel, dangerous remarks on many subjects is to contrast what Trump said with what Mrs. Clinton has done. But Mrs. Clinton wasn't the one having affairs. I mean, that's Trump's strategy. He can't beat Hillary, so he's going to run against Bill. Yeah, that's a viable strategy. That's a viable gambit. And in this case, what Mrs. Clinton did was entirely verbal as well. She made comments about the women who accused her husband of sexual harassment and or affairs and or rape, in the case of Juanita Broderick. There are suggestions that she may have participated in behind-the-scenes efforts to discredit the women who revealed encounters with him. I think it's more than just suggestions. Her actual public comments were few, though she famously claimed that the Lewinsky story was just part of a vast right-wing conspiracy. Yada, yada, yada. Now, it's not entirely clear that this is a slam dunk against Mrs. Clinton. In the first place, people grew bored with the subject in 1998, which is 18 years ago. Think about this. there will be people voting on November 8th who were not born yet when the Lewinsky scandal erupted. Bimbo. When the Lewinsky scandal ejaculated, whatever. Climaxed. Okay, well, you'll settle on that one. When the Lewinsky scandal climaxed. So it's hard to imagine that it's some sort of silver bullet now, or a hard swallow. Now, second, while it's possible that she is a total cynic, I'd say that's about right. Using her marriage as a vehicle for her ambitions, it's also possible that it was more complicated than that, which I wouldn't rule out. That she actually loved him, or at least at one time, and chose to forgive him. And maybe by the time of the Lewinsky scandal, I mean, she was in for a penny, in for a pound. She was committed. You know, her political ambitions would have been more damaged by divorcing the son of a bitch instead of, you know, this is the choice I made. This is the boat on which I signed on. So, riding this to the top or the bottom, one or the other. Perhaps her determination to discredit Bill's accusers had two motives. One, to help his career. Two, to help her career. And, as a bonus, three, to delude herself. There may be shades of gray here, which doesn't preclude the cynicism, of course. But whatever the peculiarities of her psychology, and however nasty, not to say pathetic, her decision to go after Bill's women, Bill's harem, there is certainly no doubt that as between Bill and Hillary, he was by far the most culpable. He was the one that was dipping his wick where it didn't belong. He was the one who was getting blown by interns half his age. Less than half, even then. He disgraced himself. Or at least in an earlier time, he would have been disgraced. In this case, he was feted and celebrated for it, but he should have been disgraced. Humiliated his wife, but then she parlayed that humiliation into what she's on the cusp of now, being president of the United States in her own right. And embarrassed his daughter, although I'm not sure that Chelsea Clinton is capable of embarrassment either. That he was beyond shame and carried the whole country with him in the 90s is his lasting legacy. But here's the twist, ladies and gentlemen. Look at the man who threatens to pull the trigger on mentioning the Clinton scandals of the 90s, of that era. A serial adulterer himself, who was more removed from twinges of conscience than any figure in American political life. Trump boasts of his extramarital affairs. He wrote bloody books about them. He humiliated the mother of his children, Ivana, remember her? Success is the best revenge. Remember those ads? I think they were for a perfume or something like that. Donald Trump is the playboy philosopher made flesh. Lots of it. He even found the time to mock Paula Jones as a loser for his, sticking up for his buddy, his golf buddy, Bill, and argue that Bill Clinton's conduct was totally unimportant at the time. And, this is who Donald Trump is. This is who Donald Trump has always been. And yet evangelical Trumplicans totally ignore that because they're just, it's all tribalism. It's not about principles. It's not about ideas. It isn't even about the truth. It's just the other. That's part of Trump's life. Trump will never be in the White House. He'll never make it there. He'll never be elected, but he will have a legacy. Oh boy, will he have a legacy, and none of it's good. Trump's factotums, Newt Gingrich and the aforementioned Rudolph Rudy Giuliani, are also serial adulterers, though they didn't boast about it in books. Still, their boss's crudeness is now rubbed off. Rubbed off, yeah. Yeah, you can't be involved with Trump without getting some of it on you. It's kind of like being a one of those new chicken fries at Burger King, covered in Cheeto coating. Giuliani sniped that if Hillary Clinton really didn't detect her husband's affair with Lewinsky, she was too stupid to be president. Who says she didn't detect it? And if she didn't know that about that particular one specifically, she knew that he was dicking around. She'd always known he was doing it back in Arkansas, for crying out loud. Why would she think anything had changed? I mean, she stayed in she may have loved him at one point, and who knows? I'm not going to. Do you really want me to go down the verbal road of a scenario in which Bill Clinton is on a couch? I don't want to go there. Oh, please have mercy. But she knew what he was doing. Maybe not necessarily the specifics. And I'm sure that what she was pissed about with the Lewinsky affair more than anything else was that Bill was stupid enough to try to clumsily cover it up and got caught. That's what her problem was. Or her problem with it. I mean, that was the trademark. It always was. Of La Clinton Nostra, is that they catch me if you can, but you can't catch me. I'm the gingerbread man. That was Bill Clinton, with one exception: the Lewinsky scandal. I mean, he couldn't have jizzed in a Kleenex, or he couldn't have just. He couldn't have avoided a happy ending scenario that didn't leave DNA traces on his paramour's clothing. And then, suborned, and then suborn perjury, jury tampered, obstructed justice. I mean, in other words, he didn't. That was the one Clinton scandal in which there wasn't 6 degrees of separation. It was the only amateurish Clinton scandal. That's what Hillary was pissed about. She knew what he was doing. He'd been doing it for years. At that point, her idea was, I'm riding this guy all the way to the White House in my own right. That's all she was thinking. She's never stopped thinking about that. Anyway, neither political party has a monopoly on virtue, but there was a time when Republicans at least paid lip service to the idea of marital faithfulness, fidelity, and even felt constrained to resign their offices when caught out. See, Bob Livingston, remember the Speaker of the House of Representatives that nobody remembers. Between Newt Gingrich and Denny Hastert, who also had some strange bedroom tastes, as it turned out. But, I mean, why did Livingston resign when his adultery came out? Because there used to be some shame. People used to be capable of shame. The public used to be able to used to be capable of morally scorning leaders who fell. That's not that you don't forgive them, but forgiving them doesn't mean letting them keep their power and their office and so forth. Forgiveness does not preclude consequences, in other words. I mean, even the woman at the well, when Jesus, talked to her, and no, I'm sorry, not the woman on the well. The when Jesus confronted the Pharisees regarding the woman who had been caught red-handed, or maybe pearl jam-handed, I don't know, in adultery, and we all know how. I mean, we all know how that turned out. These Pharisees are trying to trap Jesus into. On the one hand, if he forgave her, well, then you're going against Scripture. You're forgiving a sin, and you're not God. They didn't want to admit he was God. Or if he said, no, you are a sinner, you must be punished, then he would forfeit all credibility with the message of grace that he had been preaching around first century Roman occupied Israel. And so what did he do? He just knelt down on his haunches, started drawing in the sand. Now the Scripture never says what he was writing in the sand, but the leading theory, the leading belief, is that he was writing the name of the Pharisee that had entrapped her into committing adultery. What does that indicate? It indicates the Pharisees were capable of shame as well, because they all bled away. They just all walked away, and Jesus looked up, and the only person that was left was the woman. I mean, he knew who had instigated it. It had been the Pharisees, not the woman. This woman had been seduced. She'd been tempted, and she obviously gave in to the temptation. But Jesus looked up, and the Pharisees were all gone, and he asked the woman, "Where are your accusers, woman?" And she says, "They have left, Lord." And Jesus said, "Well, then I do not accuse you either." But then what did he say? Go and sin no more. Forgiveness is not carte blanche to sin as much as you want. Because remember what the prerequisite to forgiveness is. Remember, Donald Trump has never asked for forgiveness for his sins because he doesn't believe he's made any. But remember what the prerequisite for forgiveness is. Repentance. What is repentance? Turning away from your sins. And shame can be part of that process, to bring the sinner, and we're all sinners, don't get me wrong, but to bring the sinner to the place where he will, what? Admit his guilt and repent of his sins, and then be forgiven. Shame is a part of that process. And Republicans used to be capable of it. But now, obviously, no more. Even evangelicals are behaving like pagans and supporting Donald Trump. That's how Donald Trump has changed the Republican Party. Donald Trump has turned the Republican Party into a second Democrat Party. Clinton now leads one of the major parties, and the other is Clinton-esque. And Trumplicans, especially evangelical Trumplicans, simply rebelliously refuse to recognize it. The fundamental question of this video, as is indicated in the title, is against which Clinton is Donald Trump now running? Is he running against Hillary Clinton, or is he running against Bill? Bear in mind, Bill is the far better politician. And it's for that reason alone, and there's more than one reason, but it's for that reason alone that Trump's attacks on Bill Clinton will put his wife back in the White House. This is from the stridentconservative.com, David Leach specifically. Now, following his failure, Trump's, to clear the lowest bar in presidential debate history, i.e. Hillary Rodham Clinton, a fact now supported by the polls, Donald Trump spent this week regrouping after losing the first presidential debate to Mrs. Clinton, which is to say, raging in frustration and denial and delusion. In other words, Trump being Trump. Did he spend the week working on his speaking or debating skills? Of course not. He doesn't think there's anything wrong with his debating skills. Did he bone up on foreign policy and economic weaknesses? Of course not. He thinks he already knows everything. The Donald needs to be free to be the Donald, even though it's costing him the election. Instead, Mr. You're Fired brought the hammer down on his aides for stating the obvious about the beating he endured at the hands of Hillary. Although he continued to defend his use of the words Miss Piggy to describe the 1996 Miss Universe winner, the aforementioned Alicia Machado, saying he saved her job in the process. Trump also picked up two new pieces of propaganda. The first deals with Hillary's accusation at the debate that Trump is refusing to release his tax returns because it's quite possible he hasn't paid any taxes, an accusation that prompted Trump to interrupt her saying, "Well, that would make me smart." Not content with giving the appearance that he's a rich tax evader. Remember, there's a difference between tax avoidance, which is legal and smart, and tax evasion, which is illegal. Trump appeared with Trump News' Bill O'Reilly, where he added fuel to the fire by stating that America might want a tax evader as their next president. Yeah, apparently because American voters can't seem to get enough of a tabloid scandal. Hey, Bill Clinton got elected and re-elected, and so did Barack Obama. So that's America wants to be entertained above all else. They don't want to be led. They don't want to be inspired. They just want to be entertained. That's the level of decadence to which American culture has descended. And remember what they say, politics is downstream from culture. Trump's second piece of propaganda involves attacks on Bill Clinton, against whom Trump is not running, for his track record of infidelity and sexual assaults, which rivals Trump's. It's this point that will not only backfire, but will ensure Hillary wins the remaining debates and the election. I mean, if Trump decides to attend, and if he doesn't decide to drop out of the election altogether, and give Hillary the edge she needs to become the next president, which she already has, but this would be running up the score. Lends credence to the assertion, the theory, that Trump is tanking the election. Attacking Bill Clinton will have no effect on Hillary. He's the one who cheated, not she. Besides, Bill's not running for president. Hillary is, not Bill. When Trump accuses her of enabling Billy Jeff, she'll garner enough sympathy to win her the vote of every undecided woman in America by whipping out her victim card, joining hands with her feminist sisters, and leading the audience in a chorus of "Stand by your man." Once that gambit is completed, Hillary will then levy a counter-assault using the same allegations against Trump. Pot, kettle, black. If you live in a glass house, don't throw stones. Adultery. Trump's written a book bragging about his adulteries. Not to mention that he's had multiple marriages as a result. And sexual assault. There is an active lawsuit that has been filed in New York by a woman under the pseudonym Katie Johnson. She alleges that Trump, remember this from last spring? She alleges that Trump and his good friend and pedophile, Jeffrey Epstein, Also a good friend of Bill Clinton, too. Of course. These people all travel around in the same crowd, in the same social circles. Katie Johnson, pseudonymed, alleges that Trump and his friend Jeffrey Epstein, who's also, again, a friend of Bill Clinton's, raped her when she was 13 years old. Talk radio host Steve Deese contends that the Hillary campaign has been in possession of this information and has been holding on to it to use if Trump attacks Bill. Does anybody doubt that La Quinta Nostra, A, would have this information, and B, would hesitate to use it? I mean, come on, Trumplicans. We know what you think of Hillary, or what you want us to believe you think of Hillary Clinton, that she makes Satan look like Jesus Christ. Well, do you doubt? Do you doubt that La Quinta Nostra would use this against Donald Trump? Of course, you're too busy saying, "Oh, that's all lies." Well, live by the sword, die by the sword. And here's a point of mine. I keep coming back to it in the context of the current campaign, also in the context of a Trump administration's foreign policy. Attack the ego of a narcissist, and they will become so self-centered that they will self-destruct. Because it's all about them, not the country, not the people, not their followers, not their cultists. Them. The narcissist. Dear leader. And that's the strategy Hillary used in the debate. I mean, if you're wondering still why Trump disintegrated after about 15 minutes, there you go. A narcissist is the easiest person to manipulate on the planet because everybody knows what buttons to push. You think Vladimir Putin, I mean, even let's say for a second that Trump wasn't in Vladimir Putin's back pocket. Let's just say Putin could still effortlessly manipulate Donald Trump, just like he has Barack Obama. It's the easiest thing in the world to know what buttons to push to manipulate and control a cosmic narcissist. It's worked on Barack Obama for Vladimir Putin and Xi Jinping and Ali Khamenei, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, America's enemies, and it would be arguably, and I wouldn't have thought this was even possible, even easier to control and manipulate Donald Trump. And certainly Hillary Clinton, she who makes Satan look like Jesus Christ, has recognized it as well and used it to great effect. It's day-glow obvious. Trump could have a hair lip, and that wouldn't be more obvious than how easy he is to manipulate just by painting a big old target on that gargantuan ego. And like I say, it worked for perfection to Mrs. Clinton. And for that reason, among many others, Trumplicans, get ready for President Hillary. And remember, Trumplicans, it's all your fault.